With the Stage 1 playoffs nearly upon us, many individuals have been putting out their predictions, and almost every example, including my own, New York face Vancouver at the end of the bracket in a battle of undefeated teams that many have been expecting for weeks. But although it might make the best storyline, as well as the fact that the two teams have clearly been the best so far this season, I think it would be wrong to be certain that this will be the eventual outcome. Both of these sides have weaknesses, which if exploited by the right team could end their playoff run early and ruin the most likely scenario, as there are no second chances in the playoff bracket. Therefore, this analysis piece will discuss each team's specific weakness and look at their potential opponents to see where the potential hurdles lie in their quest to clash at the summit. I'm going to start with the easier team of the two to discuss, which is Vancouver Titans. This team plays an extremely aggressive playstyle behind main tank Bumper. When he charges forward, his team pours nearly all their healing and support resources into keeping him alive, so he can put out a large amount of damage into the bulk of his opponents. In turn, this catches most teams off guard, who struggle to effectively manage Bumper and consequently end up poorly positioned, and it is this space that Bumper creates that Vancouver, with players like Twilight, brilliantly punishes and effectively exploits for their own gains, highlighting how the Titans perhaps have the best mastery of cooldown and ability usage that we've seen in the whole of the GOATS meta. However, it would be wrong to say that this style has been working faultlessly throughout the first stage. Despite their 7-0 record, there have been a couple of instances in which Vancouver have nearly thrown away their perfect record, having to scrape by in Game 5s to both the Guangzhou Charge and the Chengdu Hunters. So what is it about these squads, neither of which made the playoffs, that the Titans struggled so much with? The answer being their ability to dictate the pace and tempo of the game, taking away the control from Vancouver, and this is their weakness. After discussing their playstyle, it becomes clear that Vancouver rely on being on the front foot to force engagements, with Bumper in the best aggressive position possible. Both the Charge and Hunters were able to negate this position through the use of non-meta compositions, as well as simply taking the engagements earlier than the Titans anticipated. Looking first at Guangzhou, the two maps they took from Vancouver were largely down to exploiting this weakness, first through a triple DPS comp on Nepal, and later a Sombra Goats variant on Route 66. Looking first at Nepal, this use of anti-Goat triple DPS seemed to really throw the Titans, who found themselves unable to truly focus on any one individual target due to the mobility and spread coverage of the Charger's comp. This meant they would have to wait on the control point until they were engaged upon, which isn't the style they looked at all comfortable playing, and as we saw, they slowly but surely were poked down and defeated. On Route 66, a Sombra was run against Vancouver, and with the use of hack and EMP, it prevented them from having all the abilities available to assist Bumper's aggression, and as such they were forced to play at a mixed tempo where they could only push forward aggressively when they knew that EMP was not available. Consequently, in the final overtime moment, EMP completely removed all the support to the front line and took all the initiative away from the Titans, who were then defeated. Now looking at Chengdu, they also ran anti-Goat style comps into Vancouver, which also sought to take the initiative away from them. But in their series, I'm going to focus more specifically on how they dictated the tempo by effectively punishing Bumper's aggression, through aggression and target focus of their own. Bumper has been allowed by many main tanks to walk over them and force them to position themselves where he wants the fight to take place. Yet what we saw with Armeng was a strong-willed resolve to ignore this and actually engage onto Bumper himself, and when he was perceived to be out of position, going in too aggressively. The Hunters used this to shut down Bumper's role on the second point of Anubis, and completely take hold of the initiative, with the Titans continuously having to retreat with their main threat shut down. This left them looking a little lost and confused, and it began to have a noticeable impact on their in-game performance, with Bumper actually looking a little reluctant to play his uber-aggressive style, which seemed to completely floor Vancouver's attack as Chengdu managed to hold. Therefore, from these examples, we can see that the key weakness of the Titans is that they crumble when they lose the initiative or the ability to control the tempo. And as we have seen, the best ways to target this are by running compositions like triple DPS or Sombra Goats that stylistically prevent Vancouver from dictating the pace, or by looking to eliminate the threat and presence of Bumper by engaging onto him and effectively punishing his over-aggression. Now the question as to whether they are a guaranteed Stage 1 finalist will be determined by whether the teams they might face have shown a capacity to exploit this weakness Looking first at the Boston Uprising, who we know for sure they will face, we can see an opportunity here. Boston are not a team to change their play compositionally, but behind the shot calling of fusions, there's certainly a side that could look to aggressively take the initiative and exploit Bumper himself, as dictating the pace is certainly one of the Uprising's greatest strengths, like the Titans. As for the other teams, obviously the Shock would be another side whose aggressive playstyle, if improved from the side's last meeting, could actually give them the edge this time round to knock out Vancouver. Most of the other teams don't really fit these criteria, so don't really run triple DPS or play as aggressively as other teams, aside from a few pulling out the odd example of multiple DPS strategies like Seoul and Atlanta. Therefore it's likely that there will only be a couple of small hurdles for the Titans to potentially overcome if they wish to reach the Stage 1 final. Now we come to the harder of the two teams to discuss, the New York Excelsior. The overwhelming favourite in most analysts' eyes to not only make the playoff finals, but also win it, the Excelsior are widely regarded as the most well-rounded and experienced team of the 2019 season so far. Their in-game style is dictated by being reactionary, with the team allowing their opposition to engage onto them in unfavourable positions so that Jonak can get early picks, catching individuals out of position, and immediately making the fight turn in New York's favour. As such, the team plays almost always around Jonak to ensure he doesn't die, can output a ridiculous amount of damage and pressure to his opposition. Equally, as shown in their series against the Shock, the Excelsior can, if required, play a little more aggressively, unlike their usual passive counter-attacking style, with Mano creating space on the front line for Jonak to capitalise from afar. Subsequently, I've had people ask me what New York's weakness is, or how should teams play into them, and on a very basic level, obviously looking to target Jonak is a decent strategy, given how important he is to the Excelsior's success. However, looking back at some of their earlier games, I actually think that New York's weakness is their own arrogance at times that protrudes into their play and strategy. At some points this season, the team has attempted to run triple DPS comps into perceivably weaker opponents, despite winning the 3-3 matchup at the time, and they have been punished for these decisions. Firstly, against Washington, it almost felt like they did not respect their opponents at all, as they ran this comp on Horizon and were severely punished for it. Then, against the LA Valiant, they even let their opposition take control of the series 2-1 by running this comp to no effect on Volskaya. It was almost as if they were trying to be too cute with their attacks in these examples, when they could have very easily just kept it simple with GOATs and found success. A more prominent instance of this arrogance in my mind was illustrated in their recent game against the Seoul Dynasty, which somehow finished 3-1, with Seoul not ever capturing a single point. The only reason the outcome finished this way was because New York often wasted resources in fights they assumed their own skill could overcome, even if they looked lost. Moreover, both Hybrid and Assault points saw rather complacent play from the Excelsior on the whole. On Numbani, the team did not seem to respect how long each of their attacks was taking, as they were continuing them for too long even after they should have been over. When they finally won a fight, they saw Fletter behind them, escaping, but allowed him to get away, for him to come back later with the map-winning Graviton on Zarya. As for Volskaya, Seoul didn't even gain any percentage on the point, so it looked like an easy take for New York. And they did in the end win the map, but again they wasted resources and a lot of time achieving this. Ultimately, if the New York Excelsior are able to keep things simple and run their usual 3-3 GOATs comp without any complacency, they actually have very few exploitable weaknesses to prepare for in advance. But their weakness does come down to whether their own mentality doesn't create unnecessary hurdles for them to overcome. Hence the only other hurdles I can see for this team in the form of potential opponents en route to the playoff finals aside from the Titans would be a team with a Zenyatta that has the ability to effectively duel Jonak. We've already seen that Violet and San Francisco could cause some issues, and the only other teams that might have potential would be Neko and Toronto, as well as Boombox and Philly, so there could potentially be a few bumps down the road. To conclude, we can see that although the paths to the Stage 1 finals favour a New York Excelsior vs Vancouver Titans matchup, there are teams that could cause some upset if they focus on these sorts of weaknesses. I think the team that has the best chance of achieving this is the San Francisco Shock, whose aggression and all-round strength gave both of these teams one of their tougher matches of the first stage, and have all the capability to exploit these weaknesses. But also keep an eye on squads like Philadelphia and Toronto, who've had a weaker schedule, but have plenty of quality in their lineups to cause an upset. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. You can expect a round by round preview of the playoffs over the next few days. Otherwise, comment below who you think will win the Stage 1 playoffs.